Hey there. It's me. I've been stuck here at a height of about 20,000 feet for about 2 days now. And I really don't know how I'm gonna get down. Well, otherwise I would have, obviously. I'm so hungry. I took a laptop and a recording mic with me on the flight, so thankfully I can record this video and have you guys watch it whenever you get the chance. Let me explain why I'm up here, and that'll probably explain everything. Up is a Disney and Pixar movie firmly routed in the reasons why they used to be a juggernaut of animation category of the Pixar tier list. If you didn't get lucky enough to have your teacher play this movie during a free period in school, you're probably at least tangentially familiar with the plot. A grouchy old man rigs his house with thousands of helium balloons and turns it into a makeshift airship. And even if you have no clue about this near billion-dollar grossing movie's plot, you've for sure seen this trope floating around in your life. TV Tropes names this concept balloonacy, which, I'll give them credit, is an incredible name for it. The idea being you rig yourself, something you own, or random screaming passersbys with enough balloons to send them drifting into the sky, optionally including devices to steer the rig, ascend and descend, and what have you. Hell, the poster picture for this entry is a screenshot from Pixar's Up, so that's probably a good indicator that it's the most impactful example of this trope. Obviously, riding in a hot air balloon or a similar, safer device doesn't count. It's gotta be a clumsy rig with nothing but some typical rubber balloons carrying your ass into the stratosphere. There's literally hundreds of examples of this trope in action, spanning all types of media across a good handful of decades, including 3 of my favorites being from SpongeBob SquarePants.
Balloon has enough air. Thanks. Hey, I get it. Balloon travel.
King of the Hill.
Cut the cord, Boomhauer.
Wait!
He's giving the signal. Stick out your chest so I can get a clean shot at your heart.
And Malcolm in the Middle.
What are you doing?
I plan to float above the clouds and experience a joy that only birds can know.
You're gonna fry yourself on a high voltage wire.
I'm not afraid.
Okay, upon rewatching the episode of Malcolm in the Middle where Reese constructs a balloon lawn chair in order to discover religion for this video, I noticed he uses what appears to be weather balloons in his craftsmanship, not typical store-bought party balloons. But seeing as his craft of choice is a lawn chair with no provisions whatsoever, I'm going to allow it, because it will act as great foreshadowing for the rest of this video. By this point, I imagine you're thinking, okay, that's just some television and cartoon shit. There's no way anyone would do that in real life. And to that I answer, are you fucking stupid? It's happened dozens of times in real life that we know of, with a large chunk of them happening in the era post the original iPhone. Did you even for a second think people wouldn't try reckless and dangerous bullshit for attention in the era of tase your testicles to go viral on TikTok? Which is why, for this video that will go viral on the back of my enormous talent and large monetary bribes alone, I want to cover the trendsetter of this whole thing. While balloonatics existed before him, including Al Mingolone, a daredevil photographer who in the 1930s accidentally sailed 700 feet in the air while attached to a balloon rig that lost its connection to the ground. We're talking about the guy who, in the eyes of pop culture, threw this idea into the realm of the mainstream for both comedic and extreme stunt purposes. The man whose balloonaut escapade warped itself into one hell of a story and gained more publicity than any before him. He's the man all future balloon sailors are imitating when they take up the Stumbly Sky Challenge. That man is Lawnchair Larry. Lawrence Richard Larry Walters was a little bastard who oh fuck! Oh god! Oh, I hit a fucking pigeon! Oh Jesus Christ, I hit a fucking pigeon! Oh god! It's a fucking messenger pigeon! It's got a fucking tag and everything! Hey, god, shit! What is it? What does it say?
No.
This video is sponsored by Old School RuneScape. I'm surprised I even have to tell you anything about RuneScape, because it's been a globally popular fantasy MMO since back in 2001, with the Old School RuneScape version being based on the 2007 build for a premium nostalgia experience. Old School RuneScape, or OSRS as the cool kids say, is hosting a 6-month Fresh Start Worlds event, where you get to flash back to a simpler time where the economy is fresh, the high scoreboard is reset, and your parents are still married. If you enjoy the chaos of when a game first launches and everyone has no idea what they're doing as they scurry in desperation for anything to overpower other players, or if you want to organize your friend group into a solid game of Castle Wars but everyone's got vastly different amounts of playtime, or if you've never played RuneScape before because for some reason your elementary school's library didn't have computers, or if you're looking to buy GF, or if you're looking to trim someone's armor for them, Fresh Start Worlds is the perfect place to start. And don't worry, any progress you make here isn't just for a goofy old silly time. Your items, quest points, dignity, and skill levels will all transfer into the main game after 6 months. Fresh Start Worlds is open to both free-to-play accounts and pay money to play members. All you've got to do is beat Tutorial Island and select Fresh Start Worlds once you leave, and then you're ready to struggle grinding your rune crafting to level 99 with everyone else. Click the link in the description below to start your clean slate epic fantasy adventure today. Huh. Neat. That's really cool. Don't worry about him. He'll be just fine. It's a pigeon. They can fly. Lawrence Richard Larry Walters was a little bastard who dreamed of flight his entire life. When Larry was 13 years old, he went into a military surplus store, presumably because that's where he thought you got drafted into the military since the Vietnam War was getting the USA really fucking desperate for new recruits. While he was there, he saw some weather balloons hanging from the ceiling, and was given the inspiration to use them to obtain flight, something you normally have to get by reaching level 30 in the acrobatics skill tree. That cheating bastard. Years later, Larry found the real recruitment office and applied to be an Air Force pilot. The Air Force rejected him, and the recruitment officer told him, "Larry, do you see why you can't be a pilot?" And Larry said, "No, sir, I don't see why I can't be a pilot." And the recruitment officer said, "Of course you don't see why you can't be a pilot, Larry. Your vision is terrible. You can't see anything." Larry became upset that the military had rejected him due to his poor eyesight. He stood up and said, "By God, I'll have you know I'll be flying by the time I'm 30 if it's the last thing I do." To which the recruitment officer replied, "Larry, I'm over here." Larry did what most of us do about our dreams in our 20s. He failed at them miserably and gave up on them, becoming a truck driver. But in 1982, at 33 years old, Larry had had enough of being a defeatist pussy like all of you watching, and decided it was finally time to fly. It was time to get those weather balloons. Oh God! Oh my God, I almost fell! I almost fucking fell out of the chair! Oh. Larry and his girlfriend, Otto von Bismarck, purchased 45 8-foot weather balloons. Okay, yes, I know, those aren't birthday party balloons or any of that, meaning this isn't a true one-to-one parallel with the fictional portrayals I talked about in the intro. And I even tried to save this bit by mentioning the Malcolm in the Middle episode from earlier used weather balloons instead of party balloons. But I get it. You're disappointed he didn't sail via balloons you'd see at a 7-year-old's Minecraft-themed birthday party. I was disappointed too, until I remembered 2 things. 1, statistically, if you made it this far into the video, you're committed until the end. And hey, thanks for watching. And 2, Larry's plan was still batshit insane. But we're getting to that. Let's keep going. Larry allegedly spent about $15,000 in total on his plan, including $3,000 worth of helium. That's over $9,000 worth of helium when factored for inflation. And I'm not just saying that for an old school meme reference. It's also a nice parallel to when I eat Chipotle because it's a shitload of gas. On July 2nd, 1982, Larry created a flying rig he named Inspiration 1 out of the following items: 43 helium weather balloons, 35 gallons of water in plastic jugs to act as a ballast, That's a weight that helps you not sway around too bad when piloting an unstable craft like a ship or an airship. And an aluminum lawn chair he attached those things to that multiple sources have confirmed cost over $100. Now hold the fuck on. Who spends $100 on a lawn chair? In fact, who spends $119.82 on a lawn chair, which today is over $300? On a lawn chair? Well, according to Larry, he, in his own words, put the chair through the Larry torture test and became confident it would survive his imminent ascent. Larry also prepared himself with an altimeter, a camera, some sandwiches, a bottle of Coke, a radio transmitter, a very important BB gun, and a slightly less important $800 parachute. Interesting move choosing Coca-Cola here. Caffeine is probably a good choice to help you stay alert when you're piloting an experimental craft, but I think I'll just stick with good old-fashioned water when it comes to recklessly stupid stunts. Oh, fuck! You know, if that lands on a child's soft spot, they'll die. It's important to note that in the story you're about to hear, Larry had absolutely no flight training whatsoever. The only relevant experience Larry had in what he was about to do was a single parachute course he took in the event that something went wrong. Beyond that, he was riding the wind. Literally. Larry situated the Inspiration 1 in his girlfriend's backyard, tethered it to his friend's Jeep, sat in his ridiculously expensive lawn chair, and idly waited for his time for action. At first glance, his plan seemed pretty solid. He was to hover in the air for an hour or two to test the waters, and 30 minutes before liftoff, he would inform the FAA about what he was doing so that they wouldn't try to shoot him down or crash an airplane into him or kidnap him and lock him up in New Mexico or whatever it is the FAA does with unidentified flying objects. Then he would cut away his tether and gently float towards the Mojave Desert until he made a slow descent to the ground. Everyone would have a good laugh, Larry would fulfill his dream, and they'd talk about it at dinner for a few weeks before moving on with their lives. But let's do a little bit of deduction here. If you question, hey, wait a minute, the FAA is not just going to say, okay, sounds good when they get that phone call, and at the very least, he's going to have to wait a few weeks to get a permit for this journey, you're onto something. Larry knew his intended flight was illegal, and he didn't care. He was calling the FAA to let them know that he was going to be in the sky and to watch out for him, not to get any of the proper clearances or safety procedures going. Now let me give you another piece of this puzzle that'll help clue you in onto what's going to happen. Larry originally wanted to do this stunt starting in the Mojave Desert, not flying into it from his girlfriend's backyard. The only reason they moved it to the backyard is because his girlfriend wanted him to be close to a hospital. Did you figure something out yet? Larry was planning on going through with this idea no matter what the obstacles were, in exactly the way he wanted to do it. Which means, in his excitement, there's a very good chance he overlooked a detail or two in his plan that could end up being pretty crucial to have considered down the line. There's bound to be something he miscalculated, somewhere he was misinformed, or something he was bound to mistakenly fuck up. And that's exactly what happened. Almost immediately after hovering in the air at the end of its line, the tether holding the Inspiration 1 to the Jeep snapped, and Larry launched into the air like a homemade slingshot. The calculations for this flight may have been a bit off, because Larry in no way had a lazy journey just above people's rooftops. He began soaring into the atmosphere at a rate of 1,000 feet per minute. That's about 11 miles an hour, give or take. In absolute terms, yeah, it's not that fast, but consider it in relative terms. Imagine you went on a bike ride, but instead of pedaling forward, you were pedaling straight up into the air. Now, after about 16 minutes of that, imagine how far up you'd be. And if you can imagine that, then go get on the elliptical, you lazy fuck. Now, for liability purposes, I have to put this disclaimer on the screen. But legally, no one told me I can't change the text size and transparency so it looks like this. Nor did they say I couldn't add anything to the disclaimer. I specified 16 minutes of cycling in that analogy because at a rate of 1,000 feet per minute, that means after 16 minutes, you'd have reached Larry's peak altitude of 16,000 feet, which he confirmed by reading his altimeter. Larry also had his glasses jettisoned off of his face as he propelled into the sky, but thankfully, he brought a backup pair. With his previously mentioned poor eyesight, Without those, he'd be absolutely fucked. During the entire ordeal, Larry was on the radio with his girlfriend, former Chancellor of the German Reich Otto von Bismarck. No, hang on. No, that's a typo. I remember this. Her name's actually Carol von Dusen. That's really embarrassing. How did I make that typo? Okay, it'll be fine. I probably just only made that there. I don't think I fucked up anywhere else. The entire time this was happening, Carol and Larry were in a lighthearted screaming match with each other over the radio.
Larry, cut him down! You gotta come down if you can't see! Cut him down!
I've got my other glasses. I can see perfectly. Don't worry. You copy, over.
I copy! Are you sure you're okay? There's trees up there. We can hear them. Are you okay?
I'm okay. I'm going through a thin fog layer. Over.
So you're 3 miles up in the air. Thankfully not blind, but hanging onto your glasses for dear life. You launched yourself so quickly you never informed the FAA or really anyone what you were doing. The air temperature is about 5 degrees where you are in the sky, and the air is becoming so thin that it's hard to breathe. Things are pretty bad. But don't worry, at least no one's around to see this and start laughing at you, right? Right? Wrong. Not 1, but 2 commercial airliners spotted Larry floating around in the air like a jackass. I want you to really think about this moment in history right now. Imagine you're on a plane. You're a passenger on a plane. You look out your window at your cruising altitude of 16,000 feet, and you see a man sitting in a lawn chair with a handful of snacks and a gun, as if waiting for your plane to show up at that exact spot. One of the people on those flights saw that and immediately thought, oh my god, he found me. I don't know how he did it, but he's finally here to kill me. Discussion about entirely rational fears of sky assassins aside, Larry's day was only going to get worse. It turns out he had misjudged the wind currents, and his plan to sail east over the Mojave Desert was about to go west all over itself. He was going in the complete opposite direction from what he had planned, which isn't too terrible. It's just that not too far west of him was the Pacific Ocean. And perhaps even more importantly, west of him was LAX, Los Angeles International Airport. And although this was about 20 years before one particularly bad day in New York made the world infinitely more paranoid about the misuses of aircraft, LAX probably wouldn't have taken too kindly to a man holding a gun pseudo-parachuting his way onto the runway of the 5th busiest airport in the world. Deciding about now was a good time to do something about his out-of-control death catapult, Larry thought it was finally time to call some help. He switched his transmitter to call Mayday to the Radio Emergency Associated Communication Team Frequency, which is a group of CB radio operators designated to work with local emergency response teams to help motorists and other CB radio users in times of crisis. Doug Dixon, member of the Orange County Citizens Band Radio Club and presumable cousin to Doug Dimmadome, answered his call. The following is a real transcript of that radio call.
What information do you wish to tell them at this time as to your location and your difficulty?
Difficulty is, this was an unauthorized balloon launch, and, I know I'm in federal airspace, and, I'm sure my ground crew has alerted the proper authority, but, just call them and tell them I'm okay.
What color is the balloon?
The balloons are beige in color. I'm in a bright blue sky, which should be highly visible, over.
Size?
Size approximately 7 feet in diameter each, and I probably have about 35 left, over.
You're saying you have a cluster of 35 balloons?
These are 35 weather balloons, not one single balloon, sir. It is 35 weather balloons.
Roger, stand by this frequency.
Hey, radio breaker, you don't happen to know the standard durability of a Sears lawn chair, do you?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay.
I fear what you might be asking.
Okay, so that's what I'm piloting right now, and I was just thinking, if this really works out well, we could make, like, regular commercial flights out of this. So, I guess what I'm asking is, do you think you could see yourself propelling through the air on a steel lawn chair?
Sir, I think your kind should be shot.
Options for Larry at this time were the same as the food quality at Burger King. Really just not fucking any good at all. Continuing to ride the chair wasn't an option anymore. He was running out of oxygen from how thin the air was. And the relevant people in the world below him, such as emergency and flight-related services, were beginning to take notice of what he had done. He could bail out of the chair now and let his parachute course do its job, but who knows where he'd end up. And jumping from that height is a much more daunting task than just cruising at it. There's some reports that say Larry wanted to jump at this point but lost the nerve to do so. I'd normally believe them if Larry was the sort of sniveling coward who made pee-pee in his pants at the first utterance of life accomplishment, but Larry was a gung-ho dream maker who rode a fucking lawn chair into near outside orbit, so I think he just wanted to roll with his A plan instead, popping the balloons with the BB gun that I mentioned earlier. Larry ended the life of 7 balloons on the outside ring of his chair. He began to descend back to Earth. "Yeah, fuck you, God," he cried. "I am now the unstoppable force of mankind. We now have dominion over the Earth, and nothing can stop me from evolving to that of a perfect being. Lawnchair Larry shall reign forever." You'll notice I abruptly paused there at the end of my quote because that's when Larry fumbled and dropped the BB gun. But really, that dramatic tension beat in the script didn't amount to much because, like I said, Larry was descending now. But he was descending fast. Too fast. Crash into the ground and get a new foot-long aluminum tube crammed up your sphincter fast. It was time to do what those chunky girls at the gym can never do and lose some water weight. Remember those jugs tied to the side of the chair to act as a balancing weight? Larry started dumping them off the chair until he slowed to a relatively safe speed. In Larry's own words, "I cannot say I was afraid or anything. The part that was scary was the last 300 feet with the rooftops and telephone poles coming up so fast. I was praying I would not hit one of the power lines and be fried or sizzled." The more deductive of you watching probably figured out from that post-flight quote that Larry lived through this ordeal. And that's actually because of a bit of luck. Remember how earlier I mentioned during the flight that he was in radio contact with his girlfriend, former Chancellor of Lawnchair Larry, Carol von Bismarck? Well, after telling her that he was coming back to Earth whether she liked it or not, Carol quickly notified 911 of his projected landing trajectory. The power company shut off the entire grid to the area Larry was soon to be landing in. And guess what? He landed there all right. And the thing that slowed his descent enough to Earth to make him avoid suffering even a scratch? His flying rig got tangled up in some deactivated power cables. Larry was swarmed by residents of the neighborhood he landed in because of course he was. This motherfucker just flew in from the fucking sky on a lawn chair. I'd start a new religion around him in minutes. But then, in typical fashion, a harmless and very fun event was ruined by the police arriving because it was now time to arrest Larry for having too much fun or whatever. I don't know, some bullshit law they made up. While the commotion was going on with the neighborhood people enjoying the spectacle and the cops ruining everyone's fun and planting drugs on anyone within a 2-mile radius, a reporter asked Larry what his motivation was in doing all this. Larry replied, "A man can't just sit around." That last sentence wasn't even really much of a joke because back in 1982, they weren't even exactly sure what charge to bring up against Larry's illegal flight. "We know he broke some part of the Federal Aviation Act," said Regional Safety Inspector Neil Savoy, "and as soon as we decide what part it is, some type of charge will be filed. If he had a pilot's license, we'd suspend that, but he doesn't." And after all that, what terrible and swift punishment did Larry end up facing for his victorious voyage? A $4,000 fine, which was lowered to a $1,500 fine because he was successfully able to argue in court that his flight was immune from certain aviation fines because a lawn chair doesn't exactly qualify as an aircraft. What a genius. Shortly after his adventure, Larry was interviewed on David Letterman and said that after all was said and done, his stunt cost him about $15,000. About $46,000 in today's money. Would it be cheaper to charter a flight on a small private plane? Absolutely. Would it be less dangerous? You're goddamn right it would be. But would it make you famous and help you accomplish your lifelong dream? Only if you're one boring son of a bitch. Let's finally go full circle. Why am I up here? Larry took his own life in 1993. He didn't leave a note, and there's no real consensus on why he did it. Some wrote that Larry lived a very modest, quiet life. and the fame of his stunt had thrown that into disarray. And in truth, I can't give you any sort of input because this is me case studying someone I've never met or spoken to. And anything I'd have to say on the matter would just be another unneeded speculation thrown on the pile. But I do have this observation to share. Before Larry left this world, he accomplished his dream. He fully embraced the motto of, it's easier to ask for forgiveness than for permission. He said in numerous interviews that while he'd never do such a stunt again, he knew it was something he had to do, and his life in that moment became complete. He's left a fairly strong legacy through all this. There's a sport now called cluster ballooning, which is largely the same idea and often cites Larry as a direct reference for its inspiration. Larry's chair was at one point on display in the San Diego Air and Space Museum. And while there's a documentary or two based on his life, there's also a comedy movie inspired by the events called Danny Deck Chair, which I haven't seen, and probably won't, because it looks like shit. Larry even earned a Darwin Award for his flight, which truthfully I find a bit insulting, seeing as he not only lived to tell the tale of what he did, but stated in every interview that I've seen that he never felt out of control of his circumstances. There's plenty of humor websites and articles out there written about Larry based on the premise of, haha, look at what this dumbass did, without giving him the credit he really deserves. He didn't do this out of stupidity or ignorance. He wasn't angry, and he wasn't trying to spite someone who said he couldn't do it. He wasn't even doing it for attention. He just did it because he wanted to. And that's the reason I'm up here. It's because I'm not really up here. I'm doing what I want to be doing, which isn't flying across the sky in a piece of patio furniture held aloft by some army surplus equipment. It's expressing myself through my self-pioneered style of art. There's 1,000 other topics I could have made a video on, tons of which probably would have gotten a much bigger reception and been far easier to make than this. This had a lot of research done into it, and I probably fucked up a fact or two, but I tried. But I'm sitting here, placing relevant images on my green screen, using dick jokes and swear words to keep your attention, and editing this video to never drop pacing, because I wanted to talk about Lawnchair Larry specifically. And I want to talk about things that I'm personally invested in and find interesting. And my dream is to take what I find fascinating, morph it into a digestible format, and get at least some of you out there to watch videos I make like this one and say, wow, how have I never heard of this? That's pretty fucking cool. And also, sometimes I just make wacky videos because I think they're funny ideas and there's literally no educational content to them whatsoever. But the point is, I'm up here because I want to be like Larry. He took to the sky, and I take to the studio. Where do you take to for your dreams?